Hello everyone, and welcome back. I'm the Lunar Librarian, and I know it's been far too long, but I can assure you all that I am still here. I've made a video about what's been happening with my channel and what my plans are going forward, so if you'd like to know where I've been, feel free to check that out. I'll link it in the description. But if you're just here for the content, then stick around. Today, I'll be covering the story of Verlin Spencer, a high school principal whose violent rampage left 5 dead and a 6th victim paralyzed in one of America's earliest high-profile mass shootings. Spencer's case also remains one of the most complicated mass shooting cases in American history, involving concerns of mental illness, legal negligence, and one's capability to stand trial that affected Spencer well after his crimes took place. Verlin Spencer was born on December 28, 1902, to a farming family in Colorado. Details regarding his early life are difficult to find. However, it can be assumed that Spencer had a poor relationship with his parents since he left his family home at the age of 13. After leaving home, Spencer began taking various odd jobs to put himself through school. During this time, Spencer developed a strong sense of determination and drive. Whatever he did, Spencer wanted to be the best at it. This sense of focus allowed Spencer to put himself through school, both high school and college, despite his rough start in life. After graduating with a degree in English, it's unclear from which university, Verlin married his wife Polly, and the couple moved to Ventura, California, where Verlin was employed as an English teacher. Here in California, Verlin's life seemed to be going well. He and his wife were respected members of the community, and Spencer had been enjoying success in his career as an educator. So much success, in fact, that in 1933, Spencer took a new job as a high school principal in South Pasadena. Initially, Verlin seemed to be doing well in this new role. Although his perfectionism could, at times, cause friction between himself and the teachers in his employ, Verlin was generally respected by his co-workers and employees, and seemed to enjoy his new life as a principal. Unfortunately, this situation would rapidly deteriorate. At some point, Spencer decided to go back to school to finish his doctorate, for which he enrolled in the University of Southern California. Not long after he began studying, the stress of attending school while also running one took its toll on Spencer. He began to suffer from severe stress-induced cluster headaches, which he treated with heavy doses of potassium bromide, something that was sold over the counter in the 1930s as a pain medication. He also became increasingly paranoid, believing that his staff and peers in the school district were plotting against him. This caused his behavior towards his staff to become increasingly hostile and erratic, until eventually, in 1939, Superintendent George Bush placed Spencer on a 3-week suspension due to his increasingly aggressive behavior. Spencer's leave of absence was supposed to give him time to relax, with Bush hoping that he would return to work as the strict but ultimately likable man the employees of the Pasadena School District had come to know and respect. Unfortunately, this leave of absence only seemed to make Spencer worse. Being suspended only seemed to confirm his paranoid thoughts about his co-workers. For weeks, Spencer had believed that his peers were conspiring against him, and now they suspended him from work. In Spencer's mind, this was a clear sign that the district was finally making its move against him. When Spencer returned from his leave, he was even more paranoid and agitated than ever. Apparently, he even began carrying a .22 pistol in his car with him to work. His unpleasant, erratic behavior continued throughout the remainder of 1939 and into the early months of 1940, when Spencer's contract came up for renewal. Given that Spencer had become increasingly difficult and unpleasant to work with for everyone around him, Superintendent Bush decided that Spencer's contract would not be renewed on April 30th of 1940. When Spencer heard the news, he was furious. This dismissal had, in one afternoon, confirmed every paranoid fear Spencer had since he had returned. To Spencer, this was clear proof that the school board had been conspiring against him. Furious, Spencer demanded a hearing over his termination, and although the reasons for this dismissal were rather clear, he was nonetheless entitled to a chance to plead his case, in a hearing which was scheduled for May 6th. The day of his hearing, Verlin Spencer arrived at the school district headquarters. He grabbed the .22 pistol he carried in his car, put it into his pocket, and walked into the building. Spencer headed straight for the administrative offices, where his hearing was scheduled to begin. Only 3 members of the board had arrived at this time, with the 4th member of Spencer's hearing running late, a fact which would ultimately save his life. According to Dorothea Talbert, the only surviving victim of Spencer's massacre, Spencer entered the meeting room in an agitated state. Not long after the meeting began, she heard him yelling at the other 3 men, followed by 5 gunshots from within the office, something that she initially mistook for a car backfire. All 3 men present at the hearing, Superintendent George Bush, District Business Manager Will Spear, and John Allman, principal of South Pasadena High School, had all been shot dead. Spencer then rushed out of the office and fired an additional 2 rounds at Dorothea, one of which struck her in the shoulder. Although Dorothea would survive her wounds, the gunshot caused apparent nerve damage which left her without use of her arm for the remainder of her life. After this shooting, Spencer rushed out of the district headquarters into the parking lot towards his car. When he tried to start his vehicle, he discovered that the battery was dead. Unfortunately, a group of high school students had been hanging out in the parking lot and were completely unaware of the crimes Spencer had just committed. These students helped him jumpstart his car, which Spencer used to drive to the junior high at which he had been principal. He intended to complete his revenge by killing the teachers that he believed had conspired with the school board against him. Once at South Pasadena Junior High, Spencer's next target was Werner Vanderlip, the school's printing teacher. After locating Vanderlip, Spencer forced him at gunpoint into a storage closet in the school's basement before fatally shooting him. After executing Vanderlip, Spencer crossed the campus to the classroom where his final target was working. Spencer ambushed and shot Ruth Barnett Sturgeon, the school's longtime art teacher, who died instantly of her wounds. By this point, police had been called after someone had heard the gunshots, and when they entered the school, they found Verlin Spencer in an empty cafeteria room. As police approached to confront Spencer, he shot himself in the stomach in an apparent suicide attempt. Spencer was taken into custody of the Pasadena Police Department before being transferred to the University of Southern California Medical Center to receive treatment for his wounds. Spencer would survive his suicide attempt, and after being treated for his injuries was remitted into the custody of the Pasadena Police Department. There was, however, one problem with this case. Spencer claimed to have no memory of his crimes. According to his own account of the day, Spencer had blacked out completely and claimed he was not lucid during his shooting spree. Nonetheless, the evidence against Spencer was almost insurmountable, and the only evidence in his favor was his own testimony, something which could not at the time be independently verified. In light of the overwhelming case against him, Spencer pled guilty to all charges. His guilty plea meant that he would avoid the death penalty, but was given 5 consecutive life sentences plus 20 years, which he was to serve in San Quentin State Prison. However, 3 years into his sentence, Spencer made a discovery that changed the entirety of his case. While he was hospitalized for treatment, a doctor had taken a blood sample for drug testing. This test revealed that Verlin Spencer had extremely high levels of bromide in his blood at the time of the massacre, more than enough to induce bromism. Bromism, or bromide poisoning, results from prolonged or excessive exposure to bromide compounds. It can cause a wide variety of symptoms, from physical to neurological. Psychologically, bromism can cause restlessness, irritability, aggression, confusion, and in extreme cases, psychosis. In the 21st century, bromide poisoning is a fairly rare condition. However, in the 1940s, it was a fairly common affliction. This is because potassium bromide was sold over the counter, usually without any warning label, as a headache medication. The very same headache medication that Spencer had been taking regularly for almost a year. As his blood test had revealed, Spencer was in fact suffering from an extremely severe case of bromide toxicity at the time of his crimes. So extreme, in fact, that the doctor who had tested his blood had declared him medically unfit to stand trial on the grounds of insanity. This discovery had some major implications for Spencer's conviction. Firstly, it provided medical evidence supporting Spencer's claim that he had no memory of his crimes. Conspiratorial thinking, aggression, and memory loss would all have been consistent with the symptoms of bromism, making it entirely possible that Spencer had blacked out during his shooting spree. Secondly, and more importantly, Spencer's lawyer had not submitted this blood test into evidence, and as a result it was not considered during his trial or subsequent plea deal. This means that at best, Spencer's lawyer had mishandled his case, and at worst had intentionally sabotaged it. Either way, it raised questions about the legitimacy of Spencer's trial, as well as his competency to have stood trial in the first place. Armed with this new information, Spencer got himself a job in the prison library. By night, he taught himself law and worked on filing appeals for his case. Spencer would submit 16 appeals to various courts, none of which would be heard until 1968, when Judge Thomas Healy granted Spencer a retrial. Healy's ruling was quickly overturned by a higher court, meaning the retrial did not proceed, but it did bring attention to Spencer's case. Spencer had technically been eligible for parole since 1947, and he had been a model inmate during his time in incarceration. Given this fact, and the questions regarding the legitimacy of his trial that Healy's decision had drawn focus to, Spencer was ultimately granted parole in 1970 on the condition that he move out of California. To comply with his parole, Spencer moved to Hawaii following his release. Here he spent the remainder of his life employed by the Salvation Army, working to help rehabilitate ex-convicts until his death in 1991. Verlin Spencer's case is incredibly complicated and also extremely tragic. Most of the murderers covered on this channel are aware of their actions, but Spencer was, according to all medical evidence, suffering from extreme neurological poisoning, raising some very serious questions regarding his actual responsibility for the crimes he undeniably committed. Let me know what you think of this case in the comments, and until next time, I've been the Lunar Librarian. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.